It's a
All right.
hi. Welcome to Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales. We are ready to go with our next episode. This is the episode of The Vanishing Hitchhiker. So, I am one of your hosts, Bethany, and this is Krystal.
Hello. I'm another one of your hosts.
we have we have some fun hosts. Well, tonight we're going to talk about The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Krystal, you've heard this story before?
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. All the different ways.
Definitely a classic tale. We're just going to kind of jump right into it. I couldn't find a very specific tale of the Vanishing Hitchhiker. There's so many different versions
Mhm.
of it. So I figured I would just do kind of like a generic version. But generally, the Vanishing Hitchhiker, how it starts out is there's generally a man and he's driving, and it's like a long, desolate highway, very dark, very cold. Can't really see much besides just what the light is illuminating in front of him. And he's driving down there. He's going on for hours. He's tired. He's just driving, no city in sight. And all of a sudden, the lights just illuminate a woman, a very beautiful woman, traditionally dressed in white. And he stops, he pulls over, and he lets her into the car. You know, she's a hitchhiker. She's looking for a ride somewhere. And as she gets in the car, she generally gives him like a destination of where to go. Sometimes it is a home, sometimes there's an address, sometimes there's a specific place that she likes, like a cemetery or a building. And so the man gets the woman in the car, and as they start driving, they just start conversing a bit. Finally, get to the destination. Oh, and he turns completely. No one's in the vehicle right there. So sometimes there is a garment left behind, especially if it's cold. There's like a scarf or a sweater. Oftentimes, he will go find like the family of the young woman and find out that she actually died years before, and she just kind of haunts that highway for a while, looking for people to give her rides. But that is a very, very basic telling of the story, and there's so many variations of this story. But Krystal, what about you? Have you heard any similar versions to that?
Well, along with like you mentioned the garments, and another really popular one with the garments is, she complains about being cold on the drive. So the guy gives her a sweater, and when he like knows about where she was being dropped off, and he goes and knocks on the door, and you know the whole, oh, I was looking for my sweater, and I just wanted to get it back. And then they're like, oh, she's been dead for 20 years. And then he goes and looks to find her grave, and the sweater's sitting on top of it. That's
Yes.
another. I think the version that you told, like with the garment being left behind, and then the other one is like, oh, he gave her a sweater and like finding the garment. I think those are like the two most common ones
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard. Um, and then, oh, hi,
Hi,
Landa.
Linda.
And I think, uh, me and my scary stories to tell in the dark, I had to go look at how they did that one.
Yes.
And with that one, he picks her up from a bus stop when it's raining, and it's like repeated for days. And then,
Oh.
um, and then they actually like set up to have a date, but she doesn't show up for the date. So he goes to where he's been dropping her off. And like, it's like this whole full blown relationship that he had with her. And then he
Oh,
finds
wow.
that she's dead. And I'm like, oh, I didn't remember that. Like, I went back to my scary stories to tell in the dark, because I like to see how Alvin Schwartz like plays up the urban legends, and that's how he did it, like full blown
Yeah.
relationship. So I thought that was interesting.
That's like the original version of ghosting someone.
Way back before Tinder, just
Right?
just
Just
have a
pick up the Phantom
relationship with the
Traveler.
ghost.
I'm really proud of that joke. Well, I tried to find the origin to this one, and you and I were talking before. We both kind of found that German one that neither one of us can pronounce the name.
Oh,
Um,
you want to try though?
you can. I didn't write it down. Do you want to try?
I wrote it down.
Okay.
I mean, we all know how much trouble I have saying La Yorna, so I don't think I'm going to do much better with German. And it's really long. Why is the name of it so long in German?
I don't know.
But it's okay. Om te tek ok wedunder some forgingo te liturgiski owosende. Yeah, I never took German. Don't judge me. But what it translates to is about the signs and wonders that preceded the liturgical event. And that's almost longer than the story itself.
Oh my goodness. We do have another watcher right here. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Mike, I mean, hopefully you just missed my horrible German, so that's fine that you're late.
I don't know, but Londa says good job, so there you go. I know before Krystal was like, "Hey, you took German. You should read the title." And I'm like, "No, my teacher taught German by reading Harry Potter. Like that's all she did. Read Harry Potter in German, and that was the only teaching I had."
I mean,
it worked. I picked it up.
I mean, that works. The thing I remember the most about my French teacher is she was going through menopause and would always tell the boys if they misbehaved, she'd cut off their petit pois with rusty scissors.
Oh my goodness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between school then and now.
Right? I don't think you get away with that now.
Oh my goodness.
Oh goodness.
Look at Mike. Does mean Oh my goodness.
But I did think that story that we both happened across, I thought that was really interesting. It's back from like the 1600s.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
So obviously they were driving like some sort of wagon or carriage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then they picked up a woman on the road and took her to a tavern, and she asked for beer. And every time they brought back the beer, it had something different in it. Mm-hmm. Like the first time, I think it was beer. I don't remember what it was the second time.
It was like grain.
Okay,
yeah. One of them.
And then
I think like nuts or something.
Yeah, and then the final one was blood.
Yeah, and it was a prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being a prophecy for for them.
Yeah, she said that they'd have like a really good harvest year or something. But I don't know if there's anything ever saying whether or not they actually did. She just prophesied that they would. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting, having the hitchhiker like be a prophet, I guess would be the right word.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it because a lot of the Phantom Traveler stories, it's either that they pick someone up and then they find out that they passed on, or it's like a prophecy of what's going to happen to that person who picked up the hitchhiker. So whether it's something that's going to happen, like I was watching right before this, I was watching the Twilight version or the Twilight Zone version of the hitchhiker, and the woman driving, and she constantly sees this hitchhiker who, no matter how fast she drives or where she goes, he's always ahead of her. She always sees him coming up on the road, and it freaks her out. And then she finally pulls in somewhere. Funny, right outside of Tucson, Arizona is where she pulls into. I was like, oh.
Don't pick up hitchhikers around Tucson. There's a prison there.
Yeah. No, we got too many stories out here in the desert. But yeah, she was, she decided to call home and talk to her mother. And that's when she found out her mother was like institutionalized pretty much because her daughter suddenly died. So it was like that man was basically trying to let her know, like, hey, you died and like you're not alive.
That's now. Creepy.
Yeah, you're very unalive right now. There's a Sylvester. I was about to talk about the Twilight one. That was a good spin on it. Yeah, that was a nice little spin on it. We got Mike. There's also been a few of the reverse stories where the person got picked up and got a ride and then came to find out the person that gave them the ride in the vehicle was the ghost mystery. Yes. Yeah.
So like, so you're just riding in a ghost car. That's like, are you just actually floating in space? What does that look like for the person?
Can you imagine being like another vehicle and you just see a person just in the car, like just floating, sitting there, holding their part.
There's like,
or if they're like me in the car, I just sit there with my feet up, shoes off.
Don't do that. You're going to break your legs.
Well, only in that Grindhouse movie. But yeah,
I've
there's
seen some
so many
pictures.
versions.
We won't remember what I do for a living.
I know. But yeah, there's so many different versions of this tale, and there's a lot of different it leads to like The Woman in White as a very classic tale of the
Mhm.
hitchhiker. Um
Yep. And of
Oftentimes it
course,
could be
Supernatural's very first episode.
yes. Yes. The pilot episode is Supernatural. Let's look at Sylvester's comment real quick. He talks Riding the Bull, it was the reversed Pee Wee Herman movie. Yeah. Pee Wee Herman had it.
Oh my gosh, Pee Wee Herman.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the very first episode of Supernatural had The Woman in White,
Mhm.
and it was basically she would kind of test unfaithful men, and if you tried to hit on her while you were in the car driving her home, then she would basically destroy you. So,
Yeah.
kind of thing. They had another episode that I feel like was another Vanishing Hitchhiker story, like a variation of it. I looked it up. It was season 2, episode 16. It's called Roadkill. And it's the one where,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, both brothers are driving and the woman comes out on the road and she's like asking for help. And they help her and they take her to that cabin where there's another ghost or where there's a ghost and who's like hunting them. And then they find out that that woman actually was a ghost too. And she doesn't know that she's a ghost.
I think they knew from the beginning, but she didn't.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do think that that's another twist on the Vanishing Hitchhiker. Like they kind of put like they're like multiple twists. Like they did the Women in White version, and then they did that one.
She likes The Woman in White.
Yeah. And yeah, that really I never thought about the Roadkill episode that way, but that does make sense because it really is like she was always like jumping in the road asking for help, not necessarily hitchhiking. Although they did try that and she disappeared as soon as they got like a certain distance away or something, right? I haven't watched that episode in a hot minute.
I don't know. I don't know if they went back and tried it.
But,
Oh, I think they were hunting the story of people picking up a hitchhiker or seeing a woman on the anniversary of her death. So they were driving down that road at that time and they came across her. But I think that's really neat that they took it from the ghost perspective. And it's not so much of like the ghost was the person driving. It was the ghost was the hitchhiker and they didn't know. So kind of like the Twilight Zone, pretty much. Only yeah.
Like the person not knowing that they're dead. And yeah. And it's like, well, what do you do? And then it also brings into it like, a common theme with ghost stories where you do have a ghost that just they don't realize that they're dead and they don't necessarily realize they're living the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
And is there a way for them to get out of that loop?
Exactly. Sylvester comes up with a good one. The Chicago, the famous Woman in White story. That one, I actually wrote that down. It's called Resurrection Mary.
Yep.
And yep. And so she was in like a ball gown and and so people would pick her up and she'd ask to be driven to a certain destination. And as they passed Resurrection Cemetery, she would disappear from the car.
Yeah.
Because she was buried there.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's super. And then, I mean, again, my pronunciation, La Llorona is a woman in white, really.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't hitchhike so much, but she is another woman in white.
Well, in the version, she kind of hitchhikes children. Like that's kind of her thing.
Well, I mean, it's the whole woman in white thing is, a woman that in most cases, like Resurrection Mary is not really the typical woman in white, but it is the woman that killed her kids for whatever reason, like her husband cheated on her and she went crazy, or just postpartum depression or something like that. She killed her kids and then killed herself after realizing what she had done, which is a thing that happens in real life and is super tragic. And I mean, I could definitely see that would create a ghost. And yeah, with La Llorona, she definitely goes and exacts revenge on more kids. But that's a whole, it's a whole other story.
Yeah. We'll see that one in another episode.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mike Lewis says, I may have missed it earlier. I remember hearing one about a bride hitchhiker that disappeared, and also one a prom girl hitchhiker one that had a prom girl hitchhiker that disappeared. Yeah, that's what you're saying. There's so many versions of it. And they all kind of center on what Londa says here. Angry women are freaking scary.
Truth.
Exactly.
That is very true. Because usually it takes more to anger them.
Yeah.
So when they get angry, you're just like, ah.
Well, or they're just angry because they're frustrated. They're trying to tell someone something and get help, and no one's listening to them.
Why won't anybody help me? I just want to go home.
Exactly.
Dude, I felt like that before, though. Like, you're just like in a bad situation and you don't have a way home, and you're just like, can somebody give me a ride?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a vanishing hitchhiker and don't even know it.
I don't know. I mean, you look good on podcasts, so there you go. But that's I think that's what hits home for what makes the Vanishing Hitchhiker scary. One, it's being alone in the middle of nowhere, like on that drive. You kind of get that road hypnosis. You just kind of start trailing. Your mind kind of goes different places. You're all by yourself. And then all of a sudden there's someone there, and you feel that comfort of having somebody with you, just something. And then to find out that they're what you're supposed to be scared of. I mean, that's pretty creepy, just to have someone in your car and then not in your car. And I don't know.
I think the Vanishing Hitchhiker is part of why I hate driving in the middle of the country. And, like I went to college in Ohio, and it was in a small town. And so there was farms and cornfields everywhere. And anytime I went to see one of my friends like out in the country, I'd be like, okay, now I have to drive back to campus, and it's super dark, and there's all these cornfields and fog. And all I could think of is stories like The Vanishing Hitchhiker or Children of the Corn. And it's to me, I'm like, it's just that kind of thing. It's like you're out in the middle of nowhere and nobody's around. And it's like, if somebody shows up on the side of the road, my first thought is, what the heck are you doing there? And I'm sorry, miss, I need to get home because I died in a car crash. I'm not stopping for you. I'm going to keep going. That's sorry if it makes me a bitch, but
No. So I actually had, here, I'll post what Mike said right here. He said there's an old trucker song from the 70s about a female trucker that picks up stranded drivers and takes them down the road to safety. So that's a pretty good song right there.
That's nice of her.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
That's not Krystal.
No. When I'm out in the middle of nowhere in my car, my only thought is for my own safety.
So one night, so I have two nephews, and one of my nephews, Jason, he's 19 now, but when he was younger, I took him out to what we called Nightfall. And Krystal knows Nightfall, but basically we have a thing here in Tucson called Old Tucson Studios, and they would turn this into Nightfall pretty much, like for the whole month of October. And what was interesting was I was so excited to share this with my nephew because he was finally getting old enough that I could take him to this like haunted house thing. And so I took him, and we probably went with some people, but then I took him home, just him and I afterwards. And we had to take a detour. And the thing about Tucson is there's light ordinances here. So there's not a lot of city lights. And for the reason that there's observatories, you have to see the stars. So it gets dark. Like when you're not in the city and you're like in one of the side roads or something, it's dark. And we had to take this side route for construction. And he lived way up in Rancho Vistoso, which is really, really dark. And I just remember driving, and we're just driving down Tangerine Road, which is very desolate at the time. Not a lot of communities out there. And I just remember driving one of the back roads down there to his house. And it just illuminated this man who was holding a duffel bag, just walking on the side of the road. And it was so quick. I was like, what? And Jason fell asleep because he was like a kid at the time. So he was asleep. He didn't see this. And I'm like, did that just happen? So I go and I drop off Jason. And then me, like not being you, Krystal, I like turned around to see if I could find this person. because my curiosity won out over like my gut instinct. And I'm like, what's he doing? What's he got in the bag? What's happening? Like, I want to know
Yeah.
the end of the story.
The
And
duffel
I
bag
didn't
would have
see him
stopped
again.
it for me.
Yeah.
What's
But
in
no,
that duffel bag? Way too many things.
yeah, no, not a clue. No clue it was in the duffel bag.
There
But
is.
yeah,
I
he
actually
wasn't
did
there.
give up somebody once.
You
I
did?
don't know. Yeah, I did. I was staying with my brother and sister-in-law during the summer from school because I had like an internship and summer job. And I was driving in the neighborhood, which was like central Tucson. So not horrible, but not great area. And I saw a guy walking along with a gas can, and dumb 20-year-old me actually stopped and was like, hey, do you need some help? And I took him to the gas station, and nothing happened. Obviously, like, I'm here, yay. But like, and I
That we
think,
know of.
but if I had been, well, like if I had been like out in the middle of the desert or out in the middle of the country, I never would have stopped. But like feeling in this, I guess being in the city, I felt a little bit more comfortable. And I was like, and it's broad daylight. And I did not have my own cell phone at the time. But since I was driving around a lot, my mom had given me her cell phone to borrow for the summer. And it was sitting right in, I don't know if you remember my first car that I had. It was that big old Taurus. And so it had like a, yeah.
Like pink red? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it had like a cup holder like in between the two front seats, and her cell phone was sitting right there. And he's like, so do you have like a phone number? And I was like, no, I don't have a cell phone.
As you're off, you got the phone.
With this bright red cell phone sitting right next to me in the cup holder.
Oh my goodness.
He didn't disappear, but he did get out at the gas station.
Yeah, without your phone number.
Yeah, that was, but I think nothing happened to me. And that was before I carried pepper spray with me. I feel like I'm pretty lucky. He didn't disappear. Maybe he was a ghost. I don't know. But I didn't go looking for him later on.
Londa goes shattered ego.
Like, and I didn't even think about it at the time. I thought about it later, and I was like, oh, I told him I didn't have a phone, and it was sitting right there.
Oh my goodness.
But I also like I said, it was my mom's cell phone, and I literally didn't give anybody that phone number the whole summer that I had it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Mike's editing the story. He said he missed the part about where the female trucker died in the crash many years before.
Oh, so she was a ghost?
She was the ghost, yeah.
Okay. Well, if I was a ghost, I'd drive people to safety.
Mike says that's how Jeeper Creepers got started, which anyone who knows me knows that that's my absolute favorite, like, just horror movie. I don't know. I'm such a monster girl, but I love Jeepers Creepers.
It's a good one. I haven't watched that one in a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not really a vanishing hitchhiker, but it is like on the long, desolate highway, pretty much. So.
Yeah. So those long, desolate highways, that's what you got to watch out for.
I know.
I mean, like I said, with like that guy, I think, and it could have been like a false sense of comfort, but the fact that I was in the city, I'm like, well, nothing's going to happen to me. There's people around and it's broad daylight. And now that I'm no longer 20, I'm like, yeah, something could have happened to me.
Yeah.
But nothing did, so we're fine.
There's so much stuff that it's like, I don't know. I look at stuff that happened to me as in my 20s, and I was like, how the heck am I alive? Like, you and I, we both delivered pizza. Yep. And I know we both have stories. Yep. Of situations that were like, yeah, a female driver in that situation, probably not a good idea.
I don't think there was anybody at our store that did not get robbed of something at some point.
Yeah.
And like, poor Mandy, she got robbed so many times. And I'm like, okay, but you also have your purse sitting on your front seat. Like,
yeah.
Put it in the trunk. Like,
yeah.
Not blaming the victim, but put it in the trunk. My purse was always in the trunk while I was driving.
Yeah. Londa goes, I wonder how I survived the 80s all the time.
Yeah. When I think about stuff that I did as a naive 20-year-old, I'm like, wow, I'm lucky to be alive.
I still remember the one, and then I mean, it's not really Vanishing Hitchhiker, but it's a vanishing person involving a vehicle. But I still remember the one that I delivered, and it was when I was helping out at another store across town for Papa John's, and um, it was actually one of the stores that you weren't supposed to have a female driver after a certain amount of time, but they were like, "It's
Oh,
Bethany, she can go."
fine.
I know.
It's
So I just exactly, they're like, "She's fine, whatever." So I just remember delivering, and it wasn't a neighborhood that I went to. It was like an industrial park. It was like a lot of, factories around the area. Because the thing about Tucson is you can randomly have like a housing development next to like a factory place, next to like a
Yep.
farm. Like it's so random. And I was in a factory area, and it was like, so it was a new moon. So it was right. New moon is where there's like no light, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a new moon. So it was very, very dark. And I found the address that I was supposed to go to, and it was like this hollowed out shell of a building. Like the windows were all there. There was just like a hole where the windows were supposed to be and a hole where the door was supposed to be. But then I saw that there was like an alleyway
That was the
along.
delivery address?
Yeah, that was the delivery address. And I'm like, obviously nobody lives there. And nobody's home because there's no light. But there was an alley next to it, like a little alleyway, and it had like the little post in it so you couldn't drive your car down. And I was like, me being the bright 20-something-year-old, I'm like, I bet they're down there. So I get out of my car.
I mean, what 20-something-year-old woman hasn't gone down a dark alley by herself?
Exactly. I'm like, I'll be fine.
And I'm not being sarcastic because I've done the exact same thing.
Well, you think you're like invincible at that time. And so I get out of my car and I go down this alleyway, and I see this big old bonfire. And I was like, it was hard to see anything around the fire because it was so dark, and the fire was so bright that like my eyes didn't adjust to around what was around me, but I could hear people talking around me. That's what was creepy. It was like all of a sudden I heard people talking around me. And then it was like this guy just like came out of the darkness, and he was okay, I remember he had like white hair straight like this. Okay. And then he had like perfectly white robe, like not robe, but like white top and like a white pant. And he came up, and like people were still talking around me. And I'm just like, I'm about to get sacrificed. Like, that's what's going to happen right now. This is how I go delivering pizza. And so
Happened.
yeah. And I'm just like, this is like a cult or something. And next thing I know, he just like he breaks into a smile. And he's like, "Hey, pizza girl!" And like he takes the pizza and he like gives me the 20, and then he like merges back into the darkness, and the people keep whispering around me, and I like book it out of there. But
I mean,
yeah,
they might have been sacrificing somebody that night, but I don't think they're going to sacrifice the person that brought them food.
exactly. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
That's not who I would choose to sacrifice.
Are they just like, yeah, this girl, she's delivering so late at night, she's definitely not innocent enough to sacrifice. But oh man, it's just situations like that. But that's kind of what's creepy when you're just kind of by yourself. It's dark, and then someone just kind of appears.
Yeah, and that's like, okay, I have to read Mike's comment. Oh, yeah.
Wow, AM PM out in California. Graveyard shift, got robbed an average of once a week. Oh my gosh, Mike.
That's horrifying, Mike. You're also lucky to be alive.
Exactly. Mike gets welcomed into the club of we're so glad we're alive right now.
Right. Oh, my nephew is 21, and he was working graveyard shifts at a Circle K kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And he called me one night and he's like, "Yeah, we just got robbed." And he's like so cavalier about it. And he's like, "Well, they just came in and they just like asked for a bunch of cigarettes." And like, I think anybody that's ever worked like retail or restaurants delivering pizza, like you never fight somebody if they're about to rob you. You give them whatever they ask for and you just deal with it afterwards.
Yeah.
And so, but he was just so calm and casual about it. And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Yeah, they stole this and this and this." And he's like, "Yeah, so it just happened." And I'm like, I mean, I guess I've been robbed too, but I only actually ever got robbed once while delivering pizza. They stole my cell phone and my lip gloss.
Not the lip gloss.
I know. Well,
Was
actually,
it your mom's cell phone?
At that point, I had my own cell phone and it was purple, and I was super upset because they no longer sold it and I couldn't replace it. And I was
Oh
like,
my
my purple phone. But I was like, I was like, I don't want to go back out. I'm like, I don't have my cell phone. I was notorious for getting lost because this was before everybody had GPS on their cell phones. So we did have our little map books, but oh my gosh, I was so notorious for getting lost. And I was like, I am going to get lost and I'm not going to be able to call the people and be like, where is your house? And the manager on duty was like, she was subbing from another store and she's like, I don't care, get back out there. And I was like, I was so mad.
Oh my gosh. But speaking of GPS, can you imagine being like doing a Vanishing Hitchhiker story nowadays with GPS where it's like you pick up the ghost and then they give you an address and you type it into your phone, like Google Maps or whatever. And it's like something that's like burned down or not there, like destination isn't there, or it's like a lake or something like that.
If it was like, I'm like, because trust me, if it's burned down, it'll still show up on GPS.
Yeah.
Hi. My cat is sniffing the dogs that were all over me at work today.
Gotcha.
But so that would show up. But yeah, if it was like a lake, because sometimes like they make man-made lakes and it's like, well, what if, and like, there might be like whole towns under those lakes. That would be crazy and creepy. You're just like, that's water. I don't think
that's water. Look at Londa. Life is hard for a ghost nowadays.
I think it is, honestly. We have too much other stuff going on. We're just like, nah.
I know. Yeah. That's not going to be it. I'm not going to get enough likes on TikTok for that one. So
right.
I can't post it.
Well, what about that AI filter on, I think we mentioned that before actually on TikTok that like it turns like everything into a ghost. It's like, there's a pile of books over there. It's now a ghost.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But I mean, with like, I'm like, we went off on such a tangent, but
it's okay. We're wrapping it back. So, Vanishing Hitchhiker.
So the Vanishing Hitchhikers. No, but I do think it's always, with the exception of the trucker that was a lady saving people, which is, I think that's a really cool spin on the Vanishing Hitchhiker. It's almost always it's a woman that needs help and it's always like a man trying to like save her. So I think that that's like why for me it's not relatable as like a driver, because I'm like, well, I'm not saving anybody. I'm trying to protect myself when I'm on the road.
Well, a lot of urban legends kind of have that. Like we talked about this last week too, where it was basically listen to your parents and follow the rules and nothing bad's going to happen. So that's kind of like the story of the Vanishing Hitchhiker. It's like if you don't pick up hitchhikers, kind of like that's the rule. Or if you do, don't hit on the hitchhiker because she'll probably kill you because she's a.
I mean, that was more of a supernatural spin on it, but no, but I mean, it is. It's just like, and that's in a way, that's kind of why I thought like this was a good story for like this time because we're getting close to like Valentine's Day, and it's like, and that's the thing. It's like it's always like the man that's he's being chivalrous and trying to help the damsel in distress out, and it's like, is there, and like in most of the Vanishing Hitchhikers with that, it's not like he's never. And a lot of them, he's not really in danger, but it's like, like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
It's kind of like a warning almost.
Yeah.
Like it's a story that nobody's going to believe him on. So type of deal.
Yeah.
But it's even now, like, how we kind of have those irrational fears, like my irrational fear is swimming in any type of water. And I think there's a shark in there, even if it's a pool. I'm like, there's a shark in there. I'm not going in there. One of my other irrational fears is looking in my rearview mirror and seeing someone in the backseat of my car. So,
see, I will never find somebody in the backseat of my car in my rearview mirror because I check the backseat before I get in every single time.
I do too. But I'll tell you what, the first time I had stepkids and I was driving around in my car and they got really quiet and I was driving up to my folks' house, which is like an hour drive, and I forgot they were in the back of my car and I looked in and there's one just staring right back at me. I had like a mini heart attack in my car.
I can just
She
imagine your whole
She
reaction.
was quiet for like 30 minutes straight and she was just staring at me.
I would have figured they would have been asleep.
I thought so too, but no, they just get quiet and like zone out. And then it's like they know when you look in the rearview mirror and they make eye contact with you. And you're just like, oh shoot, like I forgot I had kids, you know? Like
I'm not used to being a mom yet.
yeah, I know. Still adjusting to this. Most of these urban legends were born back in probably 40s and 50s. They've not been updated to today's societal values. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, probably why a lot of the men are the ones driving the vehicle. But that's what's interesting about the Twilight Zone, because the Twilight Zone featured the woman.
Yeah, and Twilight Zone was like that was on in like the 60s and 70s ish, right? I don't know exactly when that show was on.
Well, now I gotta look it up because I feel like people are gonna call us out on that.
Like you got that wrong.
They're like these millennials here.
But with that, the Twilight one too, she never actually got to the hitchhiker. Is that what you said? Like she eventually pulled over, but was he still in front of her?
Oh, 1959, and it was part of the first season that this one was on. So yeah, good job. Okay, so in the Twilight Zone, she's driving, and it starts out where she kind of like has a blowout, and so then they've kind of fixed her tire and she starts driving. And everywhere she drives, no matter what she passes, she randomly sees the same hitchhiker, this older man. And nobody else can see him. Like she's at the gas station and she has like her makeup case open and you see the mirror. And she looks in the mirror and she sees him behind her. And like the gas attendant doesn't see him. So that's when she starts to get freaked out because no one sees him. And then she like pulls into a diner. Nobody sees him there. I see your cat behind you.
Yeah.
And so then at some point he's like trying to get her to cross these train tracks and she's stuck on the tracks and like this train's coming. She barely pulls out in time. And so then she runs out of gas and he's by the car. It's like the middle of the night. Once again, lone desolate highway. And so she has to walk to go get gas. And she runs into this sailor who's trying to get on his boat in San Diego. And now when I was watching this for a while, I thought maybe the sailor was another hitchhiker. And I'm like, this girl's just having a really bad night, like running to phantom travelers. And so then he gets in the car with her and she's like, please just ride with me. You know, I'll take you wherever you need to go. Just be with me. Like someone stay with me. So he gets in the car with her and they start driving to San Diego where his boat's at. And she keeps seeing the hitchhiker and she's like, did you see that guy? And he's like, no. And so then she starts to like drive off the road to try to hit the hitchhiker because she's like, I'm done with this. You know, very powerful woman taking this into her own hands. She's like, forget it. I'm going to kill this guy. And so she's like driving off the road trying to get this hitchhiker, which freaks out the sailor. And he's like, I'm going to go. Like he pieces out and she's like, no, please stay. And at one point she's like, I really like you, you know, like, like, please stay with me. And he's like, you don't need a boyfriend. You need like help. And then, and he like pieces out. And so then that's when she pulls into the like motel or something outside of Tucson and she calls her mom. And that's when she finds out that her mom's in the hospital and that she actually died during the blowout that she had originally at the beginning of the show. So then
like, I'm sorry. I just thought about you're like, so she pulled over outside of Tucson and she was going to drive him to San Diego. That's a really long way to drive with a stranger in the car.
She was driving from New York to San Diego, but it was only a 25-minute episode. So they kind of had to wrap it up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just like, that's like what, a 5-hour drive though? Like with a stranger in the car.
From Tucson to San Diego?
Yeah. Like 4 to 5 hours?
Yeah, like 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
But I mean, at this point, she's been driving across country by herself, seeing this hitchhiker. So,
yeah,
probably like 4 hours is nothing.
Yeah, 4 hours with a stranger is nothing because there's this hitchhiker.
Exactly.
I wonder, did she hit the hitchhiker when she had the blowout, and that's why he was in front of her all the time? Did she see the hitchhiker before the
No,
fog?
I think he was kind of like beckoning because all of a sudden, once she realized that she was actually dead too, she got very calm. She didn't feel anything. Oh, and then that's when she got in her car and she saw him in the rearview mirror of her car. And he's like, "Are you ready?" or something like that. And she's like, "Yes." Sorry, I was talking with my boyfriend at the time, so I don't remember exactly what they said, but I think it was along those lines.
I mean, that's okay. I didn't even I didn't even find that episode or watch it, so it's all new to me. Like,
It was actually really fun. Now I want to like go back and rewatch some of the Twilight Zones. So
yeah, the
they're
Twilight
pretty good.
Zones. They're they always have that. Like, they take a well-known story and they give it like a weird twist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, just like so many other stories, like anthologies that we have out and TV series like Supernatural, isn't that just kind of like a different version of the Twilight Zone? Just same characters.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And then I don't know. I'm sorry. Today was a crazy day. So
yeah,
sorry if
you said you were working a lot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I literally stopped working like 10 minutes before we were supposed to get online.
Maybe you should go for a ride down a long, desolate highway.
I think we have plenty of those here. Yeah. And it'll be funny because there's always fog here. There's just like always fog. So
that's pretty much what makes long highways even more spooky, but at the same time, super fun is the fog.
Yeah. You driving
we don't get much of that here in Tucson.
Yeah. Sometimes. Actually, the worst fog I've ever driven in was in Tucson. But that was like a once in a lifetime fog, I think.
Yeah. Not often.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. But yeah, sorry that I'm a little bit spaced out.
You're good. You're allowed to have that every now and then.
I'm like, I was so ready to talk.
No, you're good.
Did we talk about everything I took notes on?
I was trying to think of other shows that probably had the Vanishing Hitchhiker. I know there was a book. I didn't write it down. But there is a book that someone wrote on the Vanishing Hitchhiker. It was written by Jan Harold, which is actually a guy in 1981. And then, I guess he kind of talks about the urban legend of the Vanishing Hitchhiker. So he's like, basically, typically involves a vehicle or a mode of transportation and hitchhiker who disappears, oftentimes leaving behind a garment. Or like what you said, where they show up at the place and the garment's like on the headstone or something like that. So, but I think that's what makes this story so fun, because like we said before, it just kind of taps into that fear of being by yourself and kind of like, ooh, do I help this person out? Do I not help this person out? Nowadays, we're so afraid of like TikTok and people calling us out for not helping someone out when you're really just trying to follow your gut instinct and not pick up hitchhikers.
I mean, I think that it's definitely like, listen to your gut instinct. It's telling you something for a reason.
Yeah.
And my gut instinct says don't pick up hitchhikers, even if I have done it in the past. Don't do it again. And like, also, I think like, if my car broke down or something, I would be honestly terrified to get into a stranger's car. And somebody's asked me to get into their car once when I did have my car break down, and they're like, do you want to ride? I'm like, no.
No.
No, I really don't. I have a cell phone. I'm fine.
Well, some of them don't even involve picking up a hitchhiker. Like we were talking about the one with the train, where the person's on the train, and were we talking about the train, or was that what I was reading? I don't know.
I mean, I know it's on the train, because the one on the train where like you're just sitting there talking. If you're talking about the same story I am, and they're like, he's reading a book about ghosts, right? Yeah. And then so like somebody, like the passenger starts asking and being like, oh, do you believe in ghosts? And then they like disappear.
Yeah, they're like, nope. And then the person who asked disappears. So
I would totally do that if I was a ghost.
Just mess with people.
Be like, do you believe?
Nope. Well, you do now.
Bye. See you later.
Peace out. Yeah, I'll be seeing you later.
Yeah, and it's just like, and like I think with that train one, it's just like, when you're in public transportation of whatever kind, like you're always surrounded by all these like people that you don't know, and like, are they all alive? You don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's just anywhere. Like what's that statistic where it's like how many serial killers you actually walk past
24
in your life? Yeah. Wow. You knew that number.
I don't know why I know that number.
That was like Jeopardy right there.
Yeah, Mike, something like Mike says like 24 without even knowing
that. He goes, nowadays, yeah, you can just use your cell phone to call for help. Back before the day is cell phone, though, if you were out in the middle of nowhere and might have been miles from a phone.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we called pay phones for any of our younger viewers out there.
Which is also, it goes back to driving in the country, why I feel like why it was so much scarier, because I'm like, if I break down, like even for like our generation, I got a cell phone late. I didn't get a cell phone until after I got out of college and was paying for it myself. And because like I worked during college, but I really didn't have like enough money to pay for a cell phone. And I was always with somebody that had a cell phone. So it wasn't a huge deal that I didn't have one. So, but then I'd be driving out in the country and I'm like, well, what if I break down next to this cornfield? What am I going to do? I'm 15 miles outside of town. There's no phones in between here and there. And then my friends that grew up in the country, they're just like, well, just walk through the cornfield and go knock on the farmhouse. And I'm like, why would I do that?
You're all Texas Chainsaw Massacre, anyone?
Yeah. I'm like, no, I would much rather break down in the city. And I still feel like that to this day, that I would much rather break down in the city than out in the country, even though I do have a cell phone now.
Yeah.
That's just me though. But
I guess it's just that feeling of being by yourself. That's what is creepy. Because thinking about it, yeah, I'd much rather break down in town. But I guess it's because you can go find help. Like we associate having another person with us as being, you're not alone anymore. So it's helpful. Yeah. Of course, they could be a serial killer. You don't know. But maybe they're not going to kill you and they'll be helpful that day.
Yeah. And then like with the Vanishing Hitchhiker, it's always like you're on a dark, desolate road and you have that, there's this opportunity for company that looks harmless. And like you said, it's a warning because it's like, okay, yeah, it does depend on what city, but I mean, usually there's people around in the city.
Yeah, Mike goes, it depends on what city.
It does. Yeah, it does depend on what city. Thanks, Mike. But it's just like, okay, so like you mentioned with the Twilight Zone, she'd been driving all the way from New York. And so she's getting close to Arizona. She's like, oh, I want that company, especially because she sees this creepy thing going on. And it's like, okay, you're looking for that safety in the storm, kind of. Like this is, driving on a desolate highway on a foggy night, or you see this really creepy vision. And it's like, oh, and safety in numbers, I guess. And then, but is that person actually safe?
Yeah. Londa says, for me, it's the dark in the country.
Yeah, Londa gets me on that one.
Yep. And Mike, I bet it was the old Hitchhiker episode on the old Creep Show TV show. Oh, the one with the train? I don't know.
I'm not sure if I've ever seen Creep Show. I know of it. What? I know. I've never had an opportunity to watch it. I'm sorry. I guess that's
Where's your horror card? I'm gonna punch it.
I've seen Tales from the Crypt. Does that count?
Oh, Londa remembers it. She knows that line.
Sorry, you guys, we failed on that one. We haven't.
Okay, I've seen it.
I've seen that episode of Creep Show. Or have you?
Yeah, no, I've watched Creep Show, and I read the like little comic books and stuff too that came out. So
I've seen the Creep Show movies. I just don't think I saw the like TV show version. But yeah,
I don't know. I think I think a lot of it comes back to highway hypnosis. It's kind of like if you have that phantom traveler or that vanishing hitchhiker, you're by yourself for such a long time. You pick up someone, you have this encounter. The encounter is a supernatural experience that after a while, once you're back driving on the road and you're thinking about it, it's almost like, did that happen? Did I imagine that? Was that real? Like,
No,
did I
I've
just
definitely
blink
had
out?
yeah, I've definitely had moments like that late at night driving on the road, and you think you see a person or you think you see something on the side of the road, and you look back in your mirror and they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, did I actually do that, or was I just like in that highway hypnosis? And yeah, that's. I mean, or you're a guy with the duffel bag.
Yeah. Which I'm like, hey, how are you? What's in the duffel bag?
All I can imagine is like, I just imagine he was carrying a head around there. Like, just has
It was like a heavy duffel bag. Like it was a big, like take to the gym type duffel bag.
Okay.
And it was heavy. Like that thing didn't look light and deflated. Like it was heavy. So, and this was around the same time. We'll have to do an episode on this, but this was around the same time that those clowns, like people were seeing clown sightings and stuff. So I don't know if I was just more excited that I might have a clown encounter.
That sounds about right.
Than to actually think about the fact that maybe this is not a smart idea and I probably shouldn't hunt down the random dude I saw carrying a duffel bag.
I mean, to be fair, most of those clowns, like, it's not like those clowns really did anything. They just stood around being creepy.
Well, some of them
part.
attacked people, didn't they? I don't know. We'll do an episode on that. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. We'll research that and do an episode on the clowns. But yeah, I think most of them, there might have been some that were like actually doing things, but I think a lot of them were just standing around. But if he wasn't dressed as a clown, yeah, he might have had. It is Arizona.
She probably has all his guns in there.
Just think, I'm just going to say here for guns. Walking down the road.
Exactly. Well, I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that the moral of the story is don't pick up hitchhikers.
Mm-hmm.
Always have your cell phone on you. When in doubt, call a friend.
Yep.
Or live stream it. Like, is this really happening right now?
Like, hey, you guys, look, I have a creepy hitchhiker in my seat. I just want to make sure everybody sees.
Exactly. So that, like, this person's real, right?
Years later, you all know that I wasn't lying.
Right? 20,000 likes and he'll disappear. Hashtag.
Hashtag ghosted.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is probably the end of our show. Krystal and I are tired.
I think we exhausted the Vanishing Hitchhiker.
We did. Well, next week, we're going to have, I'm sorry, not next week, but the next show, which is going to be on February 22nd, I believe. Let me just double check. Yes, February 22nd. Yeah. We're going to be doing a show and we're going to have Mike Evans on there. He's going to actually, I asked him, I was like, hey, if you think of any cool urban legends from like your area or that you want to talk about, just let us know. We'll talk about it. Otherwise, if he doesn't have one, we thought of one. Krystal had the title of it. What was the title of it?
Oh, it was the calls coming from inside the house.
Yes, the calls coming from the inside of the house. So babysitter story. Can't go wrong with babysitter horror stories.
No. Those poor babysitters, man.
Exactly. Thank you, Londa. We're glad to have you on here. Mike, thank you for being on here. Sylvester was on here earlier. So but that's it. That's episode 3 of Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales. So thanks for joining us.
Everybody.
All right. Bye.